I'm not able to do it with my eyes closed, that's what I normally do, except to read the words out. This is the story of the bird Flanagan, who is a character in Dublin. I'm sort of telling you, I wrote this out today, I'm kind of telling the story, trying to explain who was the bird Flanagan. Once upon a time in Dublin City, Ireland, there lived the most strict, boring and drippy man in the city, Aloysius Flanagan. He'd only smiled once in his life, on his wedding day, for his wedding day photograph. His face looked like a plucked frozen chicken's bottom. He glared at everybody who worked at Guinness's factory, the largest brewery in the world, where he was the quality control inspector, always holding a huge rule book. The quality of the beer was important to him. As a child, he'd heard stories of thirsty rats sneaking into the huge metal containers until the rats swelled up as big as dogs. He had determined then to become the quality control inspector, and the reputation of the beer, with its crown of foam resting like the moon in an inky sky, had improved across the world because of Mr. Flanagan and his rule book. Every day he strode importantly past the bird sellers in Dandelion Market, clucking at the foolishness of people who bought birds as pets, while serious people like himself bought investments in great ships built by the White Star Line, which had just finished the unsinkable Titanic 100 miles north of Dublin in Belfast. That day in 1912, after 40 years working there, as he was leaning over to dip his measuring cup into the largest metal container in Guinness's brewery, a worker came roaring up the metal stairs. "The Titanic has sunk! Investments worthless!" Worthless. The word clanged like a bell in Mr. Flanagan's mind. He clutched his heart and murmured in shock, "All my shares, gone!" His grip loosened, his eyes fluttered closed, and he fainted and toppled with a loud plop into the vast boiling bowl. It was like the devil's swimming pool full of black stormy beer, as round and round Mr. Flanagan span and twisted and swirled, swallowing great gulps of Guinness, as the froth and the foam and aroma choked him, and he began to sink. In his mind's eye, beer soaked and drowning, it seemed as if a huge fanged rule book was rising out of the depths of the beer like a giant shark to devour him. If only, he thought, I had wings like the birds in the bird market, I could escape this cage of dark water. And as he sank beneath the foam, it seemed to him that he grew wings, gleaming white wings, and he was rising, his spirit was rising, even as his body was sinking, drowning, dying in the foaming, choking, boiling waters. Then all went dark as the center of a pint of Guinness in a hippo's belly with its eyes closed and its tail down. Dark. Mr. Flanagan awoke in hospital. He wouldn't speak, so they brought him home to his wife, and all he would say was, "Tweet." So flustered she was that she went out to buy some tea, and when she returned, he had cut open every pillow in the house and had glued himself in his inspector's dark suit with crazy clumps of feathers. "What are you doing, Aloysius?" she cried. "Tweet," he replied. "What? Oh my God! All of the shock and fumes and beer have made you think you're a bird. Stop!" But before she could grab hold of him, he escaped and perched in St. Stephen's Green's trees in the city, overhearing a couple discussing the Free Lord Mayor's costume ball that night, and thinking it must be a great gathering of all of Dublin's birds to crown him king, off he popped. The dance floor was full of thousands of people in every kind of costume. Finally, the Lord Mayor announced the winner from a high platform, and the bird Flanagan scampered over to receive his prize. To his amazement, the Lord Mayor awarded the prize to the spinster lady who was never asked for her hand in marriage, dressed as an enormous engagement ring, with her head hidden in the diamond. In fury, the bird Flanagan scurried on stage, and as the crowd stared, he crouched down and furiously yelling, "Tweet!" laid an egg shaped like a rule book and threw it at the Lord Mayor. As he made to soar out of the window, the police jumped on him. A few months later, when he was released from jail, the bird Flanagan went back to work at Guinness's brewery. And if occasionally a serious drinker in one of the city's pubs found a pillow feather in his beer, at least the workers were cheerful and happy. Every day they fed birdseed to their old quality control inspector. His nest, lined with the torn up pages of his rule book, was perched high up in the rafters above the boiling metal containers, and every workday From then on, the bird Flanagan smiled down on everybody. The end.